Oh, yes, members, you are most welcome once again. Today is yet another day to learn together with the tutor Saddam Hussein. And I want to tell you, thank you so much always for following this lesson because it is important wherever you are, let the children be closer, including my beloved teachers. Let's learn together. Today, we want to focus on something very important. That is this animal that they always call pie. I'm sure people got to learn this, but they did not know how exactly this idea of pi came in. I want to be so brief, but most of the work will be practical. So I expect you to come so close. And after this, I also suppose you to have your own work that you're going to do practically together with the materials you'll be having. Members, when we are talking about pi, that we always abbreviate as something like that. Majority of us passed through, I remember in primary 6, that's where the introduction is always done. And as you go ahead with mathematics, you keep meeting this item, this animal called the pi. All the time, the animal called the pi. But what is this pi? Ladies and gentlemen, I want to go back slightly on these key things that we have always learned from primary 6. Now, we want to look at this word circumference. We want to look at diameter, and then we can also focus on radius, because that's where I want to develop this concept of pi. Now, when we are talking about circumference, for sure, we have learned from our teachers that circumference is simply the total distance around a circular figure. For example, if this is the circular figure that you are seeing here, the total distance right from here up to here is what we call the circumference. Actually, it's just like perimeter. Perimeter being the total distance around any figure, but this one specifically deals with the circular objects. That is what we call circumference. Now, diameter. Diameter is the longest line segment that passes through the center and lies on the ends of the circle. For example, if this is our center, this line segment that runs from here to the end through the center is what we call the diameter. It lies at the ends of the circle and it passes through the center, whereas its core, that is the radius, is the distance from the center to the line end, or the chord, which is from the center, this one here, up to the line point here, the one we call the arc, is what we call the radius. So this is diameter and this is radius, and the whole of this is what we call circumference. Now, when we're talking about this, ladies and gentlemen, I want us to be very technical about this. When we're not talking about the pi, whenever somebody, I liked so much our teachers, they would say take pi as pi. I hope you are not in the same bus as I used to be in. But when I kept on understanding and following what exactly this pi means, I went on books, found out, and have a full package about pi. We may not have it all in one lesson, but I'm going to make sure I become so brief and we move on to understand what pi is. Members, this word with this symbol was first of all introduced by a Welsh mathematician who was called William Jones. William Jones introduced this in 1706. That's when he came up with this idea of the ratio of how pi is got through finding the circumference, and we have already said circumference, the total distance around a circular figure. Then you also identify the diameter. So the ratio of these two is what we call pi. That is according to William Jones, a Welsh mathematician. That was then in 1706. The one people say 1706. Now, the ratio, when we talk about the ratio, meaning that we get the circumference of that circular object, then we divide by the diameter. Circumference out of the diameter gives us the pi. It's not just from nowhere that somebody sat down and said, no, let pi be 3.14 or 22 out of 7 or 3 whole number 1 out of 7. It's not by mistake. But today in this lesson, we are going to identify how practically we can get this. But remember, I've just told you, William Jones said, you identify, find out that circumference, you divide it by the diameter. Then after which, that result you get is what we call the pi. I know you're about to ask, but how? Yet we shall have a saucepan which has a very big circumference. We shall have a jug which has a relatively smaller. What about a cup? But today with me here, I have some few items that we are going to use. I have this. I know this one is there at home. I have this tin. I also have this, which is circular in nature. So I also have this, which is circular in nature. So today I'm going to try using them, but I will only give you, you can also try it at home using this normal bucket for bathing. You can also use it. You can use a basin. As long as it is circular, it has not changed to become oval. Now, today I want to focus on this. You can see my tin here that I have has at least this, which is very circular, and then we shall identify on how to calculate its circumference. Then after that, we also identify its diameter, and we see if we can have something closer to 3.14. I want you to be close to your calculators so that you can help me also do this together. When you are going to find out this, you need the following. You need the object itself, and now this time my object is here. This is circular. I need a thread that will help me to mark, preferably a white thread, to help you during the marking. Then you also need a ruler or any other, can be a tape measure, depending on what is nearer to you. But practically in my class, I would wish we use a ruler because it's what we use all the time. So if you have this, I will now get my thread. This is my thread. Let me first put this here. What I'm going to do, I'll identify the point of start, just as you will also do. But for my case, I'm going to tie one end to help me identify where I started and then where I will end. This practical thing, when you're doing it, make sure you do it with the learners in class. The learners will understand you better, and then life will become easier for you. So this is my point where I've tied. I will make sure I start it. I want to use this red line so that when I put it here, I'm able to know that this is my starting point. Then you instruct the learners without applying it. That's why we don't want a thread which can easily be pulled and it increases in length. No, it should be a normal one. Like today I've chosen to use this. You can now identify and make it round. Since we have said circumference is the total distance round a circular object. This is what I can do. And then this is where I have done mine. And this distance, I am very sure that what I have done, let me mark it here to allow me understand the point. This is good. Now from here, you now take it on a ruler. This ruler, I have decided to use the foot ruler of 30 centimeters. If it's not adequate, then I will make sure I add, or I will make sure I also mark where it has ended, then I restart the measurement on the part which has remained. So members, this is how it is. From here, I'm putting it exactly on 0 so that I can have this measurement to go up to there. So you can see the ruler, I've measured up to 30, but there's a small gap left. So I will hold exactly where the 30 has ended. And then I get my item. I mark it. So after marking, I see the distance which has remained. From here, I'm calling it distance because we are saying circumference is the total distance round a given figure. So this is 1.5. This is 1.5 plus 30, meaning that I have, I'm sorry, I've left my duster somewhere, but there's no problem with that. So I have this as 30 plus 1.5, which is 31.5 centimeters. So this is what we're talking about. What we have here is now the circumference of this figure. So actually, let me write here circumference. Remember, we are finding out how to get the pi. So I'm now going to identify my diameter from here. Still, I'm going to use the same point that I tied, which is right here. So I will identify my center carefully. Please, when identifying center, make sure you are very sensitive about this, because you may identify a center which does not give you accurate answers. You can now see that this figure has to be divided. We assume these parts are not there. This one has to be divided into two semicircles. The semicircle, this one, semicircle this way. So you can now see from here to here should be exactly equal. I'm sure that this is exactly the marking point. So I can now get my ruler. Later, after marking, can now pick the ruler and put here. Please teach children how to measure the thing. So you start from this point. Don't forget to tell them to always observe the starting point. Here I have exactly 10. Mine is telling me that the diameter is 10. So that is my diameter, 10 centimeters. Remember, in mathematics, we believe so much in approximating. I got 10, I approximated to 10, but it was 9.999 something. I just approximated to have something which is clearer for us to learn from. But the most important thing is to understand that you measure the circumference very carefully, measure the diameter very carefully. Then, when we are now getting the pi, the one we are calling this with this symbol here, we say circumference divided by diameter. Now, what's our circumference? Circumference 31.5 centimeters, and then this is 10 centimeters. Of course, since we are getting a ratio, there are no units there. I think we are aware of that. We are getting ratios. We don't have units given there. So we now have 31.5 divided by 10. When we are dividing by 10, we move the decimal point this side. So we have 3.15. This is what exactly we have got. But we say it's approximated to 3.1478, something like that. There are some other figures that follow. But when you deal with this, there's one here. When you round it off, it comes to 1.4. But I told you that since there are some other small units that we ignored around here, it's what has brought this. But it is just not far away from 3.14 and some other figures. And of which, if you look at this as well, when you have 31, for example, if you want to change it to this kind of 20 out of 7, remember when you divide 20 out of 7, you will get something like 3 for 21. 22 out of 7, you get 3 for 21, then 1 out of 7. Now this 1 out of 7, use your calculator. That's when you will come up with something which is close to that. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue is all about understanding where the pi comes from. We shouldn't just imagine. And by the way, for your information, all these pi, you'll get them the same. Even if you get a big saucepan and you get a circumference, the pi will always be ranging from this, either 3.14 something like that. And if you get something like 3.17, don't be so much disgusted. I'm wrong. No, there are other issues that might have come due to poor measurements, or we have not used the standard measurements. But get a white thread at home, sit down, use the best way, and it's better to do it in pairs or even more than 3 people. You can do it like that, such that when you're holding here, because when you're alone, you may have an issue with the following. What else have I left here? Or during marking, the marker might have not been so accurate. All those things are there. But you can see we have been a little bit so accurate to get something close to 1.4 I mean 3.14. That's how we get the pi. William Jones came up with this idea way back. I told you in 1706. He's a mathematician from Wales, and of course, this is what we're talking about. Mathematics shouldn't be that subject of gambling. Should be that subject that learners enjoy from. If you're a teacher, when you enter class, I'm very sure from today you will not go there and tell them, you people, we are learning about pi and this is that. Pi is 20 out of 7 or 3.14. Are we together? Yes, that is all. No. Let's develop mathematics. That's why we shall always fail to produce best mathematicians if we don't use practical ways. So you can use many. I told you I came with very many. This is a cup. You can also get the circumference, get diameter. It's the same thing. You can use a basin, but it will not have any difference of anything. Even these big water tanks, you can still get that. It doesn't bring any difference. It's all the same thing. Otherwise, I want to say, go down there and do it. I want to see in the comment section where you're going to tell me, oh, you see, I did this and this is exactly what I got. We want to have that sharing together and there. Otherwise, I want to appreciate you so much for learning with me. Any question, channel it through my comment section. I love you so much. God bless you. Let's keep together. Let's embrace mathematics. Mathematics is the key in our education. Big up. We meet again.